Doesn't matter whether you're an atheist, humanist, or whether you have a faith. Actually respecting that faith does play a role is important. I mean, he said, this is another speech from Sir Keir Starmer, he has a lot of time and respect for faith. He added that I am not of faith. I don't believe in God, but this is the important thing, but I can see the power of faith and the way it brings people together. It sounds like he's putting faith quite high up his list of priorities.
I think it's important that he's spoken about all civil society groups, including religious groups, as having something to contribute to society, and I would welcome that. I mean, I think it can hardly be denied that people's religion and belief, whether it's religious or non-religious, is very important to them, and that people organising, whether it's in the majority of our civil society, which is secular, or in religious groups that are helping people, serving their communities, driving progress forward when that's what they're doing, is an important part of our society, and he obviously respects that. I think that he needs to be careful. Before 2010, previous Labour governments, who also said they wanted to involve faith groups in the provision of public services, for example, ran into problems when they realised that religious organisations weren't bound by the same human rights and equality laws that other organisations were. Those loopholes still exist, so I think they need to be addressed. And I also agree with everything Jonathan said about the highly pressing need to address long-standing structural educational problems in relation to religion. And I would add to that list the need to reform, which Labour has said they're going to do, the curriculum when it comes to religion and beliefs, to modernise the education that children receive about religious and non-religious philosophical convictions. But I'm quite optimistic that that will be done. These are things that Labour has promised.
Andrew, let's just focus on one of the things that Andrew said, that there's a minister of faith in the cabinet. Does that sound like a good idea to you?
Well, I'm not quite sure what people mean, because there was a minister for faith and belief in the last government, the government that's just stood down. Her name was Baroness Jane Scott, and she was full-time as Minister for Faith and Belief. She didn't have any other jobs. It wasn't lumped in with anything else. So there has been a minister.
With the communities role and...
No, that's not right. She was... No, it was Baroness Jane Scott, and she was a minister in the Department for Communities, but her full-time job was Minister for Faith and Belief. And the Labour opposition had a shadow Minister for Faith and Belief, Baroness Sherlock. She hasn't been appointed yet as a real minister, but we'll see if that happens. There has actually been, I think, special pleading aside, there has been such a minister for the last few years. I've met with them very often. They've conducted the government's faith review and everything else. But I think that it is important that we recognise that religious groups, although they're important, are just a part of civil society, and civil society needs to be addressed in the whole. The same structural issues that affect religious organisations when they try to do their bit in the public sphere also affect other charities, which, like I say, are the majority of the helping sector in our country. So I think it is important, actually, not to seek to divide that sector and to treat religious organisations in the same way we treat civil society organisations. I mean, I understand that every group has its own particular issues they want to promote. Humanists UK, for example, is hoping that humanist marriage will be legalised by the current government. That's our particular issue. Every group has their particular issues, but I think we all need to recognise that we're part of one civil society, and that government, to avoid division, should address us as one.
Yeah, as one. So Sarah...